Circulatory system functions. The roles of circulatory system are to transport essential metabolites from the fat body to cells, carries waste products to the excretory system, and provide immunity to harmful organisms. The circulatory system consists of head is a pair of long, well-developed antennae sensory organs used to detect odors and vibrations in the air. The hinder end of each chamber of cockroach heart as a pair of minute lateral and valvular openings called ostia. Alveolar muscles. It helps in alternate construction and relaxation of the heart. A dorsal vessel is a major structural component of an insect's circulatory system. The heart of cockroach is an elongated contractile, narrow tube lying along the mid-dorsal line of thorax and abdomen just beneath the terga. Each chamber contracts the blood within, is pumped to a higher pressure. Hemolymph is circulated by a heart, which is simply a long muscular dorsal tube. The hemical is divided into chambers called sinuses. Aorta, or conducting vessels, which extends forward through the thorax. And this is the all part of the circulatory system of a cockroach. The respiratory system is highly efficient, but there are no lungs. Instead, the insects draw in air through external valves called spiracles and transport the air directly to the cells via tubes called trachea. The respiratory system consists of spiracles, a small opening on the sides of its body. The tracheal is a dense array of a network of air tubes found in the internal system. Last but not the least, the cercus or cerci, in a similar manner to antennae, sensing vibrations through air and ground. This is the all parts of a respiratory system of a cockroach.
My discussion and conclusion on the laboratory exercise number 2. In the laboratory exercise number 2 is all about the circulatory and respiratory system. First, we have to see is breath and circulation of the cockroach. This kind of work is not easy to do because one of all the cockroaches is very small of its body and we have to get their stomach so we can see the bread and circulating. Conclusion. Therefore, I conclude that circulatory and respiratory system of cockroach, this kind of task is not easy to do because the body of cockroach is small and it is also difficult to see or determine its breath and circulation. And it's also hard because in the first place their smell is so bad.
This is the discussion and conclusion of our laboratory exercise 2. Discussion. In our second lab exercise, the first thing we did was prepare the materials that we needed for dissecting, like freshly killed specimen cockroach, pairs of scissors, pins, styrofoam, alcohol, and digital camera. Then the cockroach soaked in the water. After that, we began the taking apart. We eliminated every one of the pieces of cockroach which is excluded in the part of respiratory and circulatory system. At that point, we labeled the parts and their function. Conclusion. Therefore, I conclude that cockroach provide food for other animals, many of which we treasure. Some species of birds and small animals could not survive without this food source. In dissecting cockroach, it is important to study the internal anatomy of insect in order to understand the structure of the respiratory and circulatory system. I learned a lot in this topic, dissecting cockroach. Also, I learned their parts and function. As an agriculture student, you need to study and remember the parts of a cockroach.
Internal anatomy of an insect, circulatory and respiratory system. Discussion. In our second lab exercise, we conduct our experiment in our home. That time, we needed some materials like fleshy good specimen, cockroach, dissecting tray, and pair of scissors, pins and cell phone, and any digital camera. Then after we complete our materials in experiment, we start to dissect that cockroach to see the parts that make up the circulatory and respiratory system, and each part we need to label them. Conclusion. Therefore, I conclude this experiment, every living thing have a part that help to eat, to see, produce, and digest. In this experiment, cockroach has a different parts and role for its life, and all parts they have a different roles and characteristics to reproduce. As a student, we need to study their parts and function that helps us to understand and learn more about the internal anatomy of cockroach.
Discussion. In the lab experiment, this is the first thing we will do. We look for our equipment for our dissect like cockroach, pin, scissor, styrofoam, and alcohol. Then we start to dissect. We remove the parts that were not needed for what we were doing to dissect. Then we label the parts. Conclusion. Therefore, I conclude in this experiment that cockroach also play a vital role in the life cycle of plant. That experiment, I found out each part of the cockroach has its own role.
This is the discussion and conclusion of our laboratory exercise 2. Discussion. Before we dissect the cockroach, we prepare first the materials that we're going to use. First, the cockroach, styrofoam, pins, blade, and camera. As we started the process of dissecting cockroach, we remove the legs and wings of a cockroach. That we use blade to remove the internal parts of the cockroach, which is included in process in order for us to absorb properly the heart and alveolar muscle. Then we put some label the parts and function of it. Conclusion. Therefore, I conclude the experiment that cockroach can help the environment. So as an animal student, it is important to study anatomy to know and understand their structures and their function part, because we can apply the knowledge that we acquired in the near future and as an agriculture student.
And this is my discussion. Same thing, first we ready the materials that we needed: the surgical scissor, the two cockroach, blade, pin, and also alcohol. And that time, we find the respiratory and circulatory of the cockroach. It's not easy to do this kind of task because the cockroach is too small to dissect. Anyway, it's very challenging because you need to determine every detail of the parts of the cockroach to find the respiratory and the circulatory system. And we do it well and clearly, and we video in every moment to have a video presentation. And for my conclusion, as a student, it is good to do this kind of dissecting, not only in the cockroach, but also other animals, because we can use this kind of knowledge in the near future. And we learn in this project the different part of the cockroach and their function, and we focus in the circulatory and respiratory. And I noticed that the part of circulatory system in cockroach is easy to remember because its parts is only few, and I learned how to dissect clearly of the small pests. That's it. Thank you.
Discussion and conclusion in laboratory number 2. Discussion. In this laboratory number 2, we have a task to perform internal anatomy of an insect, circulatory and respiratory system. The first step in performing this laboratory activity is to make sure that we all have the material needed. After that, we started to dissect cockroach. We make sure to follow the right procedure to see the parts of the cockroach. Conclusion. In performing this activity, we must do the right procedure and follow the guidelines of this activity, enable to us to identify the various parts of and their position and function mechanism. Therefore, I conclude, in performing this activity, we will easily identify the parts of the cockroach and to easily define the function and position.
In dissecting a cockroach, we need to prepare the things we need during the procedure: the tray, pins, water, and the scalpel. First, pin the cockroach ventral, view the sternum. The body is disabled into head, thorax, and abdomen. You can remove the legs. It can be hindrance. Cut abdominal segments from posterior to the interior part. Separate the segments to the side and pin. Pull out the parts of the digestive system by separating tissue. The digestive system separated to the side. Check out the white cord. The nerve cord, remove all other parts to leave only nerve cord in the delicate. Remove all parts carefully. A black background would have been better. Remove all other parts to clear the nerve cord. Conclusion. I therefore conclude that dissecting a cockroach will determine the complex parts of the insect from head, thorax, and abdomen. They function to survive and adapt to the environment similar to the humans. They have the system just like us in order to maintain its existence.